All right, let's dive in. Today we're taking on the Coast to Coast Walk in England. It's this legendary trek across the country, and I know you're eager to learn more about it, so I've brought in an expert to help us explore it.
Yeah, happy to be here. It's a really special walk.
So for someone who's maybe just getting into hiking or just hearing about this walk for the first time, can you kind of set the scene? What is the Coast to Coast Walk?
Well, it's a long distance footpath. It goes roughly 190 miles across northern England. And it was actually thought up by a famous fell walker, Alfred Wainwright, back in 1973. And, it's not like trails you might find in other countries with the blazes and the signs. It's really a route that Wainwright carefully put together. It's all in his guidebook. And you're supposed to use a map and compass to follow it. The really unique thing is that it takes you through three national parks. You go through the Lake District, the Yorkshire Dales, and the North York Moors.
3 national parks. Wow. That's got to be some pretty spectacular scenery. I'm guessing Wainwright had a pretty specific vision for this walk.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he really loved the English countryside. He didn't want to just create a path, just going from one point to another. He really wanted people to explore, to go off the path when they felt inspired, to just
Mhm.
connect with the landscape.
So it was more about the journey, not just the destination. I love that. So tell me about the route itself. Where does it start and where do you end up?
Okay, so it traditionally starts at St. Bees. It's this little village right on the Irish Sea. And you actually get to dip your boots right in the sea there at the start. And there's this fun tradition. You can pick up a pebble and carry it all the way across the country to the other coast. From St. Bees, you head east and you'll cross the Lake District with all the fells and lakes. Then you go through the Yorkshire Dales. They're known for those limestone pavements and rolling hills. And then finally you reach the other side, the North Sea, at Robin Hood's Bay. It's a really charming historic village.
What a journey. I've always wanted to see those limestone pavements. What are they exactly?
Oh, picture this. You have this huge area of limestone, and it's all naturally fractured, so you get these blocks separated by these deep, deep fissures. It's an amazing sight, almost otherworldly, like being on the moon almost. Wainwright called them a botanical paradise, and he wasn't wrong. There's all this unique plant life that just clings to those cracks and crevices.
Now, 190 miles.
Yeah.
That's quite a trek. How long does it typically take to complete the whole walk?
Well, Wainwright thought of it as a 12-stage walk, so about 2 weeks if you follow his guidebook. But there's really no right or wrong way to do it. Some people like to take it slower, maybe 3 weeks or even longer. Wainwright was all about encouraging people to just slow down and take it all in. Stand and stare, he used to say.
I can definitely get behind that philosophy, especially in our crazy busy world. Are there any particular spots along the route that you'd recommend? Like any must-see places?
Oh, there are so many. Well, climbing Kidsty Pike, for one, it's the highest point on the walk, and the view from there is incredible. And then there's Ennerdale Water. It's this gorgeous lake tucked away in a valley in the Lake District. People say it's the most peaceful spot in the whole national park. And as you're walking through the Yorkshire Dales, you go through these quaint little villages like Reeth and Keld. Each one's got its own character, its own charm. And of course, you can't forget the feeling of reaching Robin Hood's Bay and dipping your boots in the North Sea with that pebble you carried all the way. It's a moment you won't forget.
All of that just sounds incredible. I'm starting to understand why this walk is so legendary. But let's be practical for a moment. What kind of prep work and gear should someone do and bring if they want to take this walk on?
Well, preparation is key for any long walk, right? First things first, you need a really good pair of hiking boots. They need to fit well and give you support. Break them in before you even think about starting the walk because blisters can really ruin the experience. And of course, you'll need waterproof gear. You know how unpredictable the English weather can be. And don't forget, a good backpack that fits you well to carry everything you need. And that includes a map and a compass. Those are absolutely essential for navigating the coast to coast.
Okay, so map and compass. Those are must-haves. Why are those more important than, say, using a GPS or your phone?
Technology is great, and there are some good mapping apps out there. But phone batteries die, you might lose signal in some of the more remote spots, and you really don't want to be stuck without a backup. Wainwright designed this walk to be done the traditional way, using a map and compass, and there's something really satisfying about learning those skills, learning to read the landscape.
You're totally right that self-sufficiency is part of the adventure. Now, you mentioned the walk was conceived back in 1973. Has it changed much over the years?
The core route is actually pretty similar to what Wainwright originally envisioned. His guidebook, they've updated it, of course, but it's still really relevant. There have been some small changes, like if there's been path erosion or changes to who owns the land. But the spirit of the walk, the adventure, the discovery, that's all still there.
That's amazing how his vision has endured. Speaking of changes, I heard there's some news about the Coast to Coast Walk getting a new status. Is that right?
That's right. In 2025, it's becoming an official national trail. So that's going to mean a lot of changes. You'll see better signage, the paths will be better maintained, and it'll be a lot more accessible for all sorts of walkers. It's a big deal, really shows how popular the Coast to Coast is.
That's fantastic. What does that mean for people who are thinking about doing the walk in 2025 or beyond?
Well, it will definitely improve things for a lot of walkers. The signage and the infrastructure, those will make things a lot easier, especially for people who might have felt a little intimidated by how remote parts of the walk are. But we have to consider the other side of it too, you know? I mean, with more people being able to access the walk, you have to think about what that means for the trail itself. You know, will it get too crowded? Will people still get that feeling of peace and quiet that they're looking for? And there's also the impact on the environment in those national parks and how it will affect those villages along the way.
Yeah, it's a trickle situation. How do you make something more accessible but still keep it special?
Exactly. It's a real balancing act. And it's something that everyone's talking about, hikers and people who want to protect the land and the
Yeah.
people living in those villages. It's not a simple problem to solve.
You've actually walked the coast to coast yourself, haven't you?
I have, yeah, a few times. And each time has been different, you know? They've all been special in their own way.
I bet. So from your experience, what do you think is the biggest misconception people have about this walk?
Probably that it's easy, you know? People think, oh, it's a walk in the park, literally, but they don't realize how physically demanding it can be. You need to be prepared. You're walking about 15 miles a day, on average, and a lot of it's uphill, and you're carrying all your gear with you.
So how fit do you need to be to do the walk? Do you have to be a super athlete?
Not really, but you should be comfortable walking for hours at a time with a backpack on. It's good to start training a few months beforehand. You know, just build up slowly, do some longer walks with more hills. And like I said before, make sure those boots are broken in.
It sounds like a perfect way to get in shape and experience all that amazing nature at the same time. What about the mental and emotional side of things? I'm guessing the walk has an impact on people beyond just the physical.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's incredible to see how it affects people. You know, it's a real journey of self-discovery. You disconnect from all the craziness of everyday life and just reconnect with nature. You start to move at a different pace. People often say they come back feeling refreshed, like they've found a new purpose.
I love that. It makes me think about what Wainwright said about standing and staring.
Yeah.
Do you think that idea has something to do with those personal transformations you've seen?
For sure. It's like when we finally slow down, when we're actually present in the moment, that's when we start to see things we wouldn't have noticed before. You know, a tiny little wildflower or the way the light hits the hills, the wind in the trees, and just taking those moments to observe, to really contemplate things that can lead to some pretty amazing insights. You start to understand yourself and your place in the world in a different way.
It's like you're connecting with the landscape outside and the landscape inside,
Yeah.
all at once. What about people who are thinking about hiking solo? What advice would you give someone going it alone on the coast to coast?
Well, hiking solo can be a great experience, but you gotta be prepared. I mean, logistically, but also mentally. Have a good plan, let someone know where you're going, make sure you know how to navigate. And on the mental side, be prepared for those long stretches where you're alone. Figure out how you're going to stay motivated. Maybe bring a journal to write in, or a book to read, or just enjoy the silence, the time to think.
It sounds like a real test of self-reliance. We talked about Wainwright's guidebook earlier. Would you say it's essential for doing the coast to coast?
Well, it's more than just a guidebook, you know? It's like Wainwright's love letter to the English countryside. He's got these funny observations, these poetic descriptions, and he even drew little sketches. He doesn't just tell you where to go, he really brings the whole place to life. Reading it, you feel like you're right there with him, walking alongside him.
It sounds like the perfect companion for the journey. Now, what about accommodations along the way? What are the options like?
Oh, there are all sorts of places to stay. You can find those classic bed and breakfasts. Those are usually run by locals, super friendly people. A lot of walkers stay at the pubs along the way. You can get a nice meal and a local beer after a day of hiking. And then if you're looking for something more, well, Immersive, I guess. There are campsites. They're in some really beautiful spots.
Sounds like there's something for everyone.
Yeah.
Okay, I have to ask, what about the food? Any culinary highlights along the coast to coast?
Oh, get ready for some good old-fashioned English cooking. You'll be eating a lot of pub food. Fish and chips, shepherd's pie, Sunday roasts, and make sure to try the sticky toffee pudding. It's a classic dessert in that area, and it's so good, especially after a long day of hiking.
Okay, I'm getting hungry just thinking about it.
Yeah.
You've met a lot of people on the coast to coast. Have any of their stories really stuck with you?
Oh, tons of them. I mean, you meet people from all over, all walks of life. Everyone's got their own story, their own reason for doing the walk. I met this woman once. She was in her late 60s, and she was walking in memory of her husband. She was raising money for cancer research with every step she took. And then there was this young guy who had just recovered from being really sick. He was hiking the coast to coast to celebrate, He was just so grateful to be alive and healthy.
Those are really powerful stories. It just goes to show that the coast to coast is so much more than just a physical challenge. It's a journey of the heart and soul, too.
That's it exactly. It can push you to your absolute limit, physically and mentally. But by doing that, you discover a strength you didn't know you had.
I think that's a big part of why people love these long-distance walks. It's the challenge, but it's also the self-discovery, the chance to connect with nature in a really deep way.
Yeah, it's about getting out of your comfort zone, trying something new, and letting the experience change you.
We were talking before about the National Trail designation. It's got a lot of positives, but there are also concerns about what it might mean for the walk.
Right, you have to think about what happens when more people start using the trails. Will it damage them? Will it change those ecosystems and those small towns along the way? We have to be responsible individually and as a community.
Absolutely. So what can people do to make sure they're not having a negative impact,
Yeah.
that they're leaving the coast to coast in good shape for others to enjoy?
There are some basic things that make a big difference. The most important is leave no trace. Take all your trash with you, don't go off the trails, and try to be quiet, especially in areas where there might be wildlife. And support those local businesses. Stay in local guest houses. Eat at the pubs in the villages. That helps those communities.
Those are great reminders. It's not just about passing through, it's about being a good guest.
Right. We're guests in these landscapes and these communities.
Now, for anyone listening who's maybe a little intimidated by the idea of doing this walk, what would you say to encourage them? What makes it worth the effort?
Look, the coast to coast is a challenge. There's no getting around that. But it's also incredibly rewarding. It will test you, but it will also show you what you're capable of. And you get to experience some of the most beautiful scenery in England. You connect with nature, with yourself. You'll feel like you're part of something bigger.
It sounds like a journey that can really change you. Like you'll come back feeling more alive, more grounded.
That's what I've seen happen to people time and time again. It's a journey that stays with you long after you've finished walking.
Before we move on, I wanted to go back to something you mentioned earlier about hiking solo. That's solitude.
Yeah, solitude can be tough, but it can also be a gift. You'll have times where you're walking for hours and you don't see another person. It's just you and this huge landscape. And in those moments, you might feel lonely, maybe a little scared. But if you let yourself experience the silence, the stillness, you might be surprised. You might find a deep sense of peace, like you're connected to yourself and to something beyond yourself.
It's like you're going on a journey inward at the same time as you're traveling through the countryside.
Exactly. And that's part of what makes it so powerful. The coast to coast strips away all the distractions of daily life and makes you face yourself, face your fears. It helps you see what you're really made of.
What an amazing experience. For someone who might be feeling a little overwhelmed by the idea of taking on this challenge, what advice would you give them about preparing themselves, mentally and emotionally, for the coast to coast?
It's funny, getting ready for a big walk like this, people focus so much on the physical stuff, but the mental and emotional prep is just as important. Something that I always tell people is to try to really picture themselves on the walk. Imagine yourself crossing those hills, feeling the wind, and just taking in the views. And think about the challenges too, like getting tired or your muscles aching or maybe even some rain. And then picture yourself pushing through those challenges.
Yeah, I can see how that would help, just visualizing the whole thing. It would definitely boost your confidence.
And it helps you connect with why you're doing the walk in the first place, like what's drawing you to this? What are you hoping to get out of it? If you have a clear purpose, it makes it easier to stay motivated when things get hard.
It's like, it's not just a physical journey, it's an inner journey too.
Exactly. The coast to coast is all about self-discovery. And that journey, it starts before you even set foot on the trail.
I really like that. It makes me think about Wainwright and what he left behind. He wasn't just writing guidebooks, he was almost like a philosopher, you know? He wanted people to really appreciate nature, to find joy in something as simple as walking. What do you think is the biggest thing people remember him for?
I think it's his ability to make people feel that sense of wonder, that sense of adventure.
Yeah.
He was so good at reminding us that the world is full of beauty and magic, you know? We just have to slow down and notice it.
When you read his writing, it's like you're transported right to those places, even if you've never been there.
It's the power of a good story, isn't it? He paints a picture with words, and it makes you want to see those places for yourself.
Absolutely. Well, we're getting close to the end of our deep dive here, but I have one more question for you. If someone's listening to this and they're feeling that pull, that urge to experience the coast to coast, what's the one thing you would tell them?
I'd say don't overthink it. Just go for it. It's an experience you won't regret. It's challenging, it's inspiring. It will change you in ways you never expected.
That's a great way to put it. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and your passion for the coast to coast. It's been fantastic talking to you.
It's been my pleasure. Happy hiking.
And to everyone listening, we hope you've enjoyed this deep dive into the world of the coast to coast walk. As you go about your day, let your mind wander a bit. Imagine yourself on those trails, feeling the fresh air, taking in those stunning views. What kind of adventure awaits you on your own coast to coast journey?